the seven-sided stone and the seven Sabbaths. Guys, that's what we're going to talk about in this video. And you guys have seen, most likely, the previous video where we looked at this object in the sky. It appears to have seven sides. It's some kind of star. It's got rings in it. It looks just like the pattern I've been sharing with you. However, through the comments, you, of course, I've listened to the comments, and many of you have suggested that the camera that's being used is actually creating these things we're looking at, okay? And look, I'm no expert on this, okay? So I'm glad I put the video out there so that I could get the information, because I don't know, you know? And it also would appear that this object could be Venus. Now, in the video, he said that it was on the west, and he pointed out the moon. I also saw the moon in the western sky at that time. So it could just be Venus. By making a statement that it's a great sign is misleading. So I'm taking the video and I'm making it private. Not this video, the previous video, talking about this seven-sided star. Because, is it a great sign? Yes, to me. Because I draw this pattern many years ago and I see it. You know, someone shows it and it looks exactly the same. So it's a sign for me. Is it a sign for everybody? Is it a great sign that the scriptures are talking about? Maybe not, okay? Or at least we need more information. So some of you have more expertise in photography and other things, and you've said that, and we take heed to that, okay? But we're still watching. Maybe this is something weird, okay? Or maybe something is going on, and we're just creating awareness to it. And, you know, some of you have said, hey, it looks like the sundial in Qumran, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it actually does. Here's the sundial. If you want to get one of these, I'll put links in the description field. We can observe the spring equinox coming up real soon. Okay, so you can get one of these, and it measures the equinox. Now, guys, in this video, what we want to do is talk about the seven Sabbaths. In the scriptures, there are seven different types of Sabbaths, distinct. And these tools that we're sharing with you, these diagrams we're sharing with you, measure the Sabbath. How do we know when the Sabbath is? Okay, what are all these different Sabbaths? We're entering an era, we enter a Sabbath of rest. So the seven-sided pattern that we're sharing with you is something we've observed previously. This was just a confirmation for us, but there were other examples of this, which you're looking at here, with experiments done with, I can't remember, light and water and something, and they form these shapes that you're looking at. And you can see this one is seven-sided. It forms a circle inside. So I knew that this pattern was something in creation, something really amazing. And so that's basically what I'm trying to share with you, is something that is of a heavenly order of things, okay? And this heavenly order also tells us about the Sabbath. Yes, there are in fact seven Sabbaths. Now, as we look at this diagram, there's a lot of information here, and many of you just won't understand it. However, I do want you to understand two simple Sabbaths. We're going to go through seven Sabbaths, but we're going to start off with the two most simple Sabbaths. So with this diagram, as you can see, there are seven sides to it that go around. And then what you can see in the center, you see 12, and those relate to months. Okay? And then what you can see is you see another ring, and you can see those count to 50. Okay. But then we have an outer, and these again are 7, but you see what we've done is we've drawn years. Okay? And 1,000 years, 2,000 years, 3,000 years, 4,000 years, 5,000 years, 6,000 years, 7,000 years. So, our first Sabbath is a week of days. Okay, now a week can mean more than one thing. This is so simple, I don't know how people can miss this. But when is the weekly Sabbath? The Most High created heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he rested. Well, those are 7 days, okay? Each day begins at sundown. So the weekly Sabbath of 7 days is sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday. That's the 7 days of a Sabbath. Now, interesting enough, in Greek, even though the Greeks, mostly the Greek Orthodox, they keep Sabbath on Sunday, their word in Greek for the 6th day or Friday is paraskivi. And paraskivi means preparation. So the 6th day, what you're doing is you're making preparation on the 6th day for the Sabbato. And in the New Testament, Sabbath is Sabbaton, and that is Sabbath. So you're making preparation on Friday for Saturday, and Saturday is the Sabbath. Guys, there's so much evidence of this, but basically what we're looking at, the Greek language, the whole known world was speaking Greek, okay, at the time of the early church. And then when the gospel spread, the people were keeping the Sabbath everywhere, okay? And when they were keeping the Sabbath, this is before the Constantine changed it to Sunday. So the weekly Sabbath, this is what I want you to understand. I want you to understand two things, okay? Many of the details you may not get, but these two things I want you to understand. There's a weekly Sabbath. It's sundown Friday to sundown Saturday. Okay, good. That is a fact. Don't change it. That's just the way it is, okay? If you break it, you're breaking the Ten Commandments. Now, there's another Sabbath of 7,000 years. This is called the millennium. And so, the Apostle Peter said, a day with the Lord is as 1,000. Okay? So if we count the days of the week, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000. So, our next Sabbath is a Sabbath of the millennium, 1,000 years of rest, 1,000 years of reign of Jesus Christ, okay? So, those will be the two easiest ones for you to understand. And the idea here, guys, is Hebrews chapter 3. Let's look at it. Now, this is really important. Actually, Hebrews chapter 4. Let us, therefore, fear lest the promise being left to us of the entering into rest, any of you should come short. For unto us was preached the gospel preached as well as unto them, but the word preached did not profit them, not being mixed by faith, for which we have believed do enter rest. So, guys, the idea of rest, of Shabbat, is faith. So it's by faith you enter into rest. For he said, I have sworn in my wrath, they shall not enter into my rest, although the works were finished from the foundation of the world. For he spake in a certain place of the seventh of the wise. God did rest the seventh day from his works. Okay? And again in this place, if they shall enter into my rest. So you have to enter into rest by faith. Seeing therefore it remaineth to some that must enter in, they to whom it was first preached entered not because of unbelief. Okay, so the Jews were a pattern of not entering rest, not keeping Shabbat. Again, he limited a certain place, saying to David, today, after so long a time, as you said, today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts. For if Jesus had given them rest, he would not have afterwards spoken of another day. Wow. Let's pay attention to this. This is fascinating. Now, what this is saying, some translators said, okay, this is Joshua. But what this may be saying is that it was actually Jesus, Yeshua, that was there at the time of the Exodus. Okay? For if Yeshua had given them rest, then they would not have afterwards spoken of another day. Now, I apologize, my Bible is not that clear right here, but you can see, there remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. Now, this is very important that you understand. The word here, that there remaineth therefore a rest. Now, that word in the Greek, you can see it, is sabbatismos. And the word is only used here. And it's a word obviously meaning Sabbath, keeping the Sabbath, okay, keeping the Sabbath. But not only that, it gives a indication that this is the millennial Sabbath, okay, that we must enter. The blessed rest for the toils of the troubles looked for in the age to come by the true worshipers of God and the true Christians. So it's an age. So this word Sabbath is not just any 7-day or any of the other ones we're talking about. It's an age. And the idea with Sabbath, guys, is to rest, to cease from your works, to cease from your ability. Okay? For he that is entered into rest, he also has ceased from his works. Okay, so the idea is you cease from your works. Without God, you can do nothing, as God did from his. Let us labor, therefore, to enter into the rest, lest any man should fall after the same example of unbelief. So he's saying that, look, the same unbelief that the Jews did in the Exodus, the Christians are doing the same thing. So in Hebrews 4, the rest that the people enter is this 7,000 years, the 1,000-year rest. And again, 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8, one day with the Lord is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. So that's why we have 1,000 years, 1,000 years, 1,000 years, and 1,000 years, a millennial rest. Okay, so there are 7 days, okay, of creation, and then those 7 days are 7,000 years. In the 7,000 years, that period is called the millennial rest. So we have 7 days, 7,000 years, and 7 years. So there's also something called a Shemitah. You can see it here. Shemitah in the Hebrew is rest. It's a 7-year rest. And Leviticus 25:4, in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath, a Shabbat of rest unto the land. It is a year of Shemitah, year of rest. You can see that in Deuteronomy 15 and Deuteronomy 31. So our next Sabbath is every 7 years. So with our diagram, what you can see is on the outside you have 7, okay? And we can see that those are 7 days, and they're 7,000 years, okay? Now, the order of this is also the 7 churches. So I want to take a moment to explain how the 7 churches relate to the next part of what we're going to discuss. So the churches we're trying to make this colors, but in Revelation 2 and 3 we have the church of Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamos, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, Laodicea. 7 churches, okay? And those churches are called candlesticks. And a candlestick is a menorah, okay? So one menorah has 7 lamps. Okay, so you have 7 churches, and they're called the 7 menorahs. So each church is a menorah, and each menorah has 7 lamps. So now what we have more of a multiplying effect going on. So we still have the same order of 7, but now we have something else. So for example, Ephesus. The menorah of Ephesus is here. Okay, so you have the first church, Ephesus, this is a 1, and then you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So these 7 are the lamps of the church at Ephesus. It's a menorah. Okay, then we do the same thing. Smyrna, we count after the 7. Smyrna is the second church, second menorah, second ecclesia. Okay, but now it's number 8. So then we count 8. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 is the menorah of Smyrna. Then we get to 15. 15 is Pergamos. And so the menorah of Pergamos then has 7. Then we get to Thyatira, 7. We get to Sardis, 7. And Philadelphia, 7. Our last one is Laodicea. And Laodicea is a menorah like the rest, and then it has its 7. Now, if you can see here closely, let's kind of do a zoom. You can see that completes 49. So there's 49 candlesticks. Now you can see here in in this kind of pink color, this is 50. So everything that we're explaining to you revolves around the Son of Man. So the Son of Man is the center, okay? It is his throne. That's what all this is, okay? And what it says the Son of Man stands in the midst of the 7 golden menorahs. So he is 50. So Christ is the Lord of the Sabbath. He is the Jubilee. He is the 50. Okay, so you have these 7 churches, which have a total of 49 lamps, okay? But then Christ stands in the midst of them. So he stands in the middle of those churches. He's the Son of Man, okay? And he thus is the 50th lamp. He is the light of the world. So he is the Jubilee. He is the order of everything we're saying revolves around him. He's the Lord of the Sabbath, okay? So that's important for us to understand that now we have a multiplying effect. So we've looked at the 7, and we've seen just, 7 days. Okay, we can see 7,000 years. We can even see 7 years, right? So we can see all that, but now we're starting to get into the 7 times 7. So just as we saw with the 7 churches, you have 7 churches times 7 lamps. Now you have a total of 49. Then we get into the cycle of Jubilee. So just as the Son of Man was in the midst of the 7 golden candlesticks, he is 50. Now let's look at the Jubilee. Our next Sabbath is the 50th year. The 50th year is the year of Jubilee. Okay, so after we have counted 7 times 7 years, or 49 years, okay, with the rest every 7 years, just like the 7 churches, okay, then we come to the 50th year. The 50th year is a year in itself, okay, and it says in Leviticus 25, verse 10, make holy the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout the land. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and return every man to his possession and his family. Okay, now, our possession and our family is New Jerusalem, is heavenly. Okay, so it's not that we do anything on the earth, but it is a year of release, okay, a year of release of the land, and you return the land to the previous owner. The debts are forgiven, and you return to your family. So it's a 50th year of Jubilee, and we saw that clear pattern of Christ being the Jubilee, being the Son of Man in the midst of the 7 golden menorahs. Our next Sabbath is counting the Omer, it's called, or counting the 50 days from the Feast of First Fruits to Shavuot. And we find this in Leviticus 23:15. What it says, count the day after the Sabbath 7 Sabbaths. Okay, so see how what we're doing, we're counting the 7 Sabbaths just like we counted the 7 years. Okay, now we're counting 7 Sabbaths. So how many Sabbaths, how many days is in 7 Sabbaths? 49, right? So we can see the same principle taking place here in days that took place here in years. Okay, because you had 7 times 7, 49 years, 50th year, Jubilee. Now we have the same principle being applied, 7 Sabbaths, 7 times 7 is 49 days, counts to 50 days, to Shavuot. Okay, now let's look at this on the calendar real quick so you can just visualize it. So during Passover, Passover is here, the 14th day, there's a week-long feast called unleavened bread. During unleavened bread, you have a feast called first fruits. So that's the day after the Sabbath. And then you count the 50 days, counting this day, you count 50 days, or 7 times 7, 49 days, to get to the Feast of Weeks. So you can see here, you count from here 49 days, and that brings you precisely to the 8th day of the 3rd month. And this is the Feast of Weeks. So what we just observed is something fascinating, because
we've just found out that from Passover, this whole period of time is a Shabbat. That's right. This whole period of time is a Sabbath. Going from this day to this day is the 50 days, and it's also a period of time of rest, of preparation, to labor to enter into rest, okay? To further explain that in our diagram, you can see that these are months. So the first month of the year is Abib or Nisan. This is going to be the March, okay? And what you can see is that there's the church, we're calling it church at Laodicea. That's that interval of time. Because remember, all these churches relate to the time throughout the year. So what happens is from that point where we start counting to the 50th day is the church at Laodicea. Okay, and that period of time goes through the first month, the second month, and the third month. So what that is showing us is that you count 50 days to get to not only 50 days, but the 50th week of the year. And the 50th week of the year is the Feast of Weeks. Why? Because you're on a single day, and not only a day, a week. It's that recognition of what's taken place throughout the year. Now, they found this in the Dead Sea Scrolls only recently, in the last couple of years, where what they would do is they would count the 7 weeks. They would count the 7 weeks from first fruit, and they called that one feast. Like there are 3: corn, wine, and oil. So let's call this corn. And then they counted another 7 weeks, and they called that wine, and they counted another 7 weeks, and they called that oil. Well, what they were doing was they were doing this cycle. So they started counting those, realizing that there was a cycle throughout the year of 7. So here are the months of the year, and now what you can see is as you count the weeks, that continues. You counted 7, you get to the 50th week. You count 7, and then it continues. And it lines up perfectly with the 7 menorahs, the 7 golden candlesticks, okay? So what that is telling us is that once we get to the first month, we get to unleavened bread, we get to Passover in that season. From that time all the way to Pentecost is a Shabbat. So now we have the 50th week of the year. So you can see we had the 50th year, 50 days. Now we have the Feast of Weeks. And so what that means is that's the 50th week of the year. It's also called first fruits. Leviticus 23:17 called first fruits, and Deuteronomy 16:9, 7 weeks you shall number, and you will keep the Feast of Weeks. Okay, so the Feast of Weeks is our next Shabbat, our next Sabbath.
And our last Shabbat, or Sabbath, is the famous Daniel 9, 70 weeks. Okay, there's 70 weeks that are determined, and 70 weeks is the apocalypse. So we can see from the Feast of Weeks, okay, a week can mean, it can mean 7 days. You can have a Feast of Weeks that happens once a year, okay? And so now we can see that this relates to Feast of Weeks, or 70 years. Now what Daniel 9 says, there are 62 weeks and 7 weeks. So simple math is if we take these and we go and apply them to Israel being reformed as a nation, 1948, we had 62, we come to 2010. And we add the 7, we come to 2017. As well, if we divide 360 by 7, we have 51.428571. And we have the year of Jubilee in the fall of 2015 to the fall of 2016. That was the year of Jubilee. Then we have 1 year, Esther's preparation. Okay, Esther was prepared. 6 months of myrrh, 6 months of sweet odors. That was in the fall, 2016 to 2017. Something else very important to note with this pattern before we conclude is the fact that the apocalypse is 14 years. Okay, we're going to go through this real quick. Don't worry if you don't understand all of it. I want to include this in our Sabbaths. It's important. We'll have more details. This may not make sense unless you go back and watch some of the previous videos on how we've determined some of these things. But what we've understood is that all the prophecies converge together in agreement regarding these patterns. Okay? And the apocalypse is, of course, 7 good years, 7 bad years. Now, we have, of course, in 2014, we had the blood moons. There was a lot of talk about the 4 blood moons, the lunar tetrad. That was in 2014 in Passover, 2014 Tabernacles, 2015 Passover, 2015 Tabernacles. Now, what happened in these last 2 is something very, very important and significant. Why? Because the prophecy says when you see the sun turn to sackcloth, that's a solar eclipse, and the moon turn to blood, that's a lunar eclipse, or a full lunar eclipse is a blood moon. Now, what it's talking about is having those not just happen, but happen 2 weeks apart. That's correct. So if we were to go back to 2015, in April 4th, there was a full blood moon. Okay? 2 weeks prior to that, on March 20th, there was a solar eclipse. So this begins to form a pattern. Then once we get to September 28, 2015, there's a full blood moon. 2 weeks prior, solar eclipse. So what happens is you have a solar event or lunar event, an eclipse. It can be solar or lunar. 2 weeks later is another eclipse. So this begins to form a pattern. Okay, we got the 4 blood moons, and then the 3rd and 4th of those begin to form a pattern. This pattern continues, guys, for 10 years. Every 10 years, within a certain window of time, there is an eclipse, whether it be solar or lunar, preceding a lunar eclipse. They go in patterns of 4. So then once we get into 2016, the same thing continues. Okay? 2016, solar eclipse, then lunar eclipse. And this is in March 23rd. Okay? September 1st, same thing. Now, actually, what happens now, it begins to reverse itself, where you have a lunar eclipse before a solar eclipse. And now what you see, you have them patterns of 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, and 4. Now, what this is doing is, this is something where we saw the menorah. So we have the pattern of 7, right? Well, a menorah has 7 lamps. Okay, remember how we saw the 7 churches? 7 menorahs, each has 7 lamps. Now, the menorah also has something called almond blossoms. And the menorah, the branches on the menorah were specifically to have blossoms of an almond tree. Actually, I can look outside. The almonds are blossoming just now. But those actually correspond to these eclipses perfectly. So you can see we started in the center has 4. And then each branch has 3. It's a total of 22 almond blossoms. When we apply that menorah to these eclipses, they match precisely to this sequence of lunar eclipses. You can see we have the 4 blood moons, and they continue and they number through 22. Now, the other thing we want to mention to you, we'll have another video on this, guys. This might be new information, I understand. But the reason we're making note of this in relation to the Sabbath is here on green, there are priests. The priests serve every Sabbath, okay, and they have certain names to them. Let's kind of zoom in on this a little bit. So this document is not finished, guys. We're going to have another video on it. I just want you to see this and understand it, okay? Because I'm getting the calendar in order. So remember how before we saw the year 2010? Okay, so 2010 is right here. That's when we begin to observe this pattern, and that's these 14 years. Now, each priest has a number to them. See how that's a number 3? This is, I'm going to correct this. It's just got to be adjusted by 1. I'm going to submit the calendar. So what this is a priest. He serves every Sabbath. So you can see the numbers. Okay, and there's the priest. Now, what happens is I'm marking the priest that serves during that week where that eclipse falls. Okay? And what you can see is another order where it seems to go in almost a sequence. So priest number 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13. Okay? It seems to go in an order in sequence of the priest. Okay? And it goes, remember there was 22 almond blossoms, right? You can see those here. 21 and 22. Well, there's 24 elders, okay? And these eclipses correspond to these elders. It goes in an order, okay? And you can see it keeps going. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 22, 23. So, amazing. So, these eclipses, guys, are the ones that are prophesied. Why? Because it says, when you see a solar eclipse, so we had solar eclipse March 20th, solar eclipse September 12th, okay, 2015, and a blood moon 2 weeks later, okay, so then you have a blood moon 2 weeks later, blood 2 weeks later. So that is the Jubilee, it's 2015. I have another video on that. I'm not going to get too much into it, but these are all signs and indicators of the last days that we're in, okay? So what have we learned? We've learned that through this pattern we can understand the Sabbaths. In Zechariah chapter 3, verse 9, on one stone will be 7 eyes, or 7 sides, engraved with an inscription. So we believe that those 7 are the 7 churches, okay? And the stone has, it says 7 eyes. It means in Hebrew ayin or ayanim, and that can be eyes. It can be colors, 7 colors. That's why we have 7 colors here, because it's the colors Roy, G, Biv. Actually, this way. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, right? Or however that goes. Anyway, so we've learned that through this pattern, there are 7 Sabbaths. So keep the Sabbath, okay? Keep all the Sabbaths. It's by keeping the Sabbaths that I understand everything I'm telling you. That's how I learned when the Jubilee is, okay? You can see there's your Jubilee. How do we know when that is? We have another video on that. Okay? And so keep all these Sabbaths. So what are the Sabbaths that we have to look forward to? Is the 50 days to Shavuot. Okay? Very exciting. And of course the Feast of Weeks, Shavuot itself, it's called the Feast of Weeks, and First Fruits. So that's what's coming up next besides the weekly Sabbath. The weekly Sabbath is sundown Friday to sundown Saturday. Okay? We're going to enter 1,000 years of rest. Okay? We by faith enter rest. So that's what this pattern is teaching us, guys. This is part of a lot of information. The Lamb Reigns, 1,260 days. There's a playlist on a lot of these details. This is also the 7 churches, the 7 ecclesia. That's what this is, okay? So thanks for watching, and God bless you.